Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is Harika. So in previous video, we have seen everything about the database, need for automation, and what are the different actions that we can perform on database. And along with that, I have shown you in the SQL data management studio, how we can, server management studio, how you can actually create the database and how you can get the server name and how you can use them in order to connect that in the studio. So by that, I think you got enough knowledge on it. So let me go to the studio over here. So we have seen this part where we got the connection string for in order to make a connection between the server that we are using in our process and also to the studio. So we have made the connection. So that is first point. And now we are going to see the other actions that we can perform. But before to that, if you're not sure about the activities that you can perform in the database, so firstly, I would like to introduce this to you. So we have seen that we've created the column names, right? So let's go over and save the table. So let's say this is student student details class or student details table. Okay, so let's save like this. So we have saved the table with all the columns. Okay, so let's refresh. And under tables, if I just expand, you can see the table, right? So we can find all the columns that we have created over here. So that's how you can actually create a table. And once this is done, what is the next step? You have to push the data or update the data and all these different actions. So how you can do, if you're someone who don't know SQL before or who have never written a SQL query before, don't worry, you can just get the queries from here. So I'll show you. Just take a new query window. So here, just go to the database name. And from here, you can actually take script data table as, and you have options, right? Select, insert, update, so create to, and all these options. So based on these options, you can actually create the scripting from there itself. So in a short time, I'll show you how you can do that. But before to that, let's go into the studio and see what are the other actions that we can perform using the activities that we have in the studio. Okay, so firstly, we have established the connection, and let's look closer into the output data type. So in the previous video, I couldn't explain completely because I just lost my internet connection, so I had to drop off suddenly. So here we have established the connection string, which is an input for the connect activity. So now let's look at the output portion. So if you say we have database connection, and it is used to perform the operation within the activity. That's what it is given over the if you just hover over that particular activity property, it is given there, right? So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a value here. So let's say variable. I'm going to use a shortcut, which is Control K, and say database connection. Okay. So if you go to the variables, we have database connection, and it's a type database connection. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, why I have created, I'll show you shortly. You will understand the purpose of creating it also. So now I have created the connection, and we have also checked in the previous video to test the connection and also how you can connect to the particular database. Okay, so once that is done, let's go into the first thing, which is I'm going to create some data in the studio. Okay. Let's use here, if you just observe, we have multiple activities, right? So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to use execute non-query. So what this activity actually does, it is used for updating, inserting, and the deleting. So we have seen in the previous video, these are the different actions that we can perform, right? So this activity is used to do update, insert, and delete. So without any delay, let's create some data. That means let's push some data into the SQL server. Okay, so for that, if you see what is the input for this activity, it also needs a connection string. So instead of connecting or giving the connection string again and again, what I'm going to do, I am going to use the database connection output that I have from here, and I'm going to use it here. Okay, so if you see existing connection, I'm already having a connection that is created. So just take that variable and put it over here. So the connection part is established. And now what's the next thing? We have to pass a query here. So what's the query that you wanted to pass? So now let me show you the query. So first of all, what I'm going to do, I'm going to insert the data. Let me go to the server here. So I'm having my, student table. Okay. So here what I'm going to do, I'm going to use script table as. Okay. So I'm going to script table as and insert to new query editor window. That's it. It will prepare the script by itself and it will provide you the script. Okay. So here what I have to do. So let's understand manually how you can do this. Okay. So here you have to provide in the data. So how you can do that? So let's say you have the data like this. ID is 1, 2, 3, 4 or whatever. And the marks is 7 and the grade is 8. Okay. So this is how you can actually create the data. So let's execute this and see. So if you see one row got affected. Okay, that means the data, whatever the data that we have provided here has been pushed into the database. So now what I'm going to do, in order to see what the data is, I should use a select query, right? So what I'm going to do, just go to select to this window. Okay. So now what it will do, it will select all the rows that are there in this particular. So the data that I have pushed using this query can be seen here. So let's take everything into a single query. We can execute it separately. Okay. So that data has been shown here. So let's say if I'm changing the name and adding the columns, more rows, and then I execute this. So again, one row got affected. And then now I can see the 2 rows of data has been reflected into the database. So this is how we can do manually. But now how I can use this code or use this query and do the same action through automation. Okay. So let's copy this whole code. There are some small things that we have to change. So I'll show you what are those. Just go over here and you have an option called edit query. Okay, just click on it. You'll get a window where you can actually paste your query. Okay, just pass in the query here and just say, okay. You have to pass the query inside the double quote. Okay, so this should be of this sort. Okay, once that is done, so once that is done, you can see the affected record. So before to that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a variable. Okay, just say number of rows that got affected after doing this action. So if you see, even the SQL is also returning how many number of rows got affected, right? So if you see, one row got affected. So in the same way, here also we can see how many rows got affected after executing this particular query. So now I am going to use a message box and just push this number of rows here. And then we can see how many rows got affected after doing this action. Okay, so let's change Monica to add. Okay, and then say okay, and just save it. So now I'm going to debug this and see how many rows got affected, and also after executing this, I should get the data reflected in the database. Okay, so let's see this. So firstly, it will establish the connection. Later it goes and execute the non-query activity. And then it's gonna show up how many rows got affected. Let's wait for it. It's taking a bit longer time. Okay. So if you see, it has come over here, and then I'm saying, okay. So if you see invalid object name, student details table, you know why this is coming? Let's check it out. So these are the things that we have to learn, because whenever we get an error, only then we can, exactly understand what is going wrong. Okay. So what is the information that I've provided? Students details table, right? So this is students details table, and that is inside demo database name. So first let's check here. If you see, students database is the database that I have connected to. Okay. So students database is this one. So what I have to do, I have to connect to demo database name, right? So let's go to connection wizard. We all know how to do this connection. So just take the server name quickly and then just copy it over here. Just as the connection, it succeeded. And from here, demo database name. Okay. And then say okay. So this is my connection string, which is correct. And now just to cross check under demo database students details table. So here, if you see, students details table is not found because it's not under that particular database. Okay. So perfect, right? So we have connected to the correct one. And now let's run this and see. And if you see, the message box is showing 1. Let's go to the SQL Server Management Studio and see if the data got affected. So how we can see, just execute the select query and it will give you, along with the existing data, it will give you the new line item, new row. Okay, that is Adam. Right, this is perfect. So we have seen how we can use and execute non-query activity and insert the data into the database. Okay, so this is how we can do. And you have to remember what is the output of this: number of rows that got affected, which is of type integer. Okay, and that's done. After that, what we are going to see, so there are multiple actions that we can perform, right? Apart from insert, we can update the data. So let's see how we can do that particular action. So I'm going to come over here and then script table as, and then update to. Just take that particular update query. If you see, we have a little bit difference in the query, how it actually appears. Okay, so let's go over here. Where is my query? Yeah. So this is my query. Okay, so I'm going to update the students details table with this information where the condition is this. Okay, so now what I'm going to set the condition as, so let's say if the student name is there, I am going to change this to, let's say if the student name is Monica. Okay, then I'm going to set these values. Okay, so let's change. First, try to understand what exactly we are doing by understanding the query, by understanding the sense behind the query. Okay, so I wanted to change the student name as Harika and then the student ID as 1, 2, 3 and the marks 7 and the grade as B. Okay, this is the things that I want to change. So these 2 rows will get affected by doing the update activity. So, and also some things that I have to remove here or these, just updating the query so that we don't have any errors. So before you actually provide in and run the process, just, you just have to check over here. If it is running properly without any issues in the studio, in the SQL, then obviously you can execute that in the studio. Okay, so let's execute this. So 2 rows got affected. This is perfect. So now what I'm going to do, I'm gonna first insert a lot of data with this, with Monica. So 3 times I have done. So 3 rows should get affected. If you want, we can just have a look at this. So if you see, I am having 4 rows that are having this detail. So once after I execute this update query, I will do it from Studio this time. Let's copy this, and once after I execute this particular query, 4 rows should get affected. So let's see how we can do that. So just pull for update also we have execute non-query, which is the same. Okay, I'm pulling execute non-query and then say edit query, go in and just paste that particular query. Okay, let me show you. Inside the double quotes, you just paste the query. Okay. And then what is the important thing? You have to establish the connection. I'm using the same database connection, and here the number of rows that got affected, that should be 4. Okay. And I'm just disabling this for time being. Cool. So now let's run the file, and we have to see all these 4 are changing to the okay. So now we can see there's a difference, right? So it shows 0. That means none of the rows got affected. So now, okay, that's the previous one. Okay, this is 4. Okay, let me show you to avoid the confusion. The message box that got 0 here is the previous one we have commented out, so that's why it has come 0. But this is the 4 rows that got affected after executing update query, which is as expected. Okay, so let's say okay, and then just I will execute this query, and we can see these 4 rows changing to Harika, and the values are also getting changed here. Okay, let's see that. So this is perfect, right? Now, what I'm going to do, so that's about update. And what else we can do by using execute non-query? So if you just hover here, we can delete the data, right? So let's look into that one thing as well. I'm going to push this, and then it's quite simple. It's the same norm that we are doing. If you want, I can just leave it as an assignment for you, or you can just pause the video and do it by yourself, like just do the scripting that how we have done till now, and just try it on your own. Okay, so now we have a where condition. So if you want, you can delete the whole table by using this query, or you can use certain conditions where, the name is this, or the marks is this, or the grade is this, like that. Okay, just like how we have seen in the previous example. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to delete the whole table. Database connection, and here the number of rows. So just take a guess at how what should be the count of the number of rows. Okay, so let's go here and see what is the count as of now. So we have 8 rows, right? So this should be 8 that got affected. Let's run the file. So 8, perfect. This is perfect. And now what I'm going to do, let me go to the SQL and just execute this. We don't have any data that can be reflected because we have deleted the whole table. So now till now we are just to see the values from the data table, we are just using this and executing this. But how to use this particular query from the UiPath Studio? So let's look into that portion. Okay, so for that we have an activity called execute query. So till now we were just using execute non-query in order to perform all the actions, insertion, updation, and the deletion. But for selection we should have execute query. So let's pull that here and do just the same thing. By this time you would have understood what exactly we have to do here. Just providing the value, say okay, and then just take the existing connection, database connection. And here there's a one small thing that you have to remember. So what is it? The output type. Okay, so the output of this is a data table. And here also, if you just observe, let me load it with some data. Okay, so if you just observe, for insertion, updation, and deletion, it just shows how many rows that got affected. But for selection, if you just observe, it is showing the data table itself, the values in the data table. So what would be the output of it? It's a data table, right? So now let's create an output variable with dt output table. Okay, so I have created the DT output table, and we have an activity, right, to see the values that are there in the data table, which is write range. So let's write the data into this workbook. So what's the workbook path and what is the data table? So let's say I will mention students info table dot xlsx, and then what's the data table name? Output table. So that's all. We'll see the table details over here. So let's run the file. Go to this and then for. Okay, I think we can't see any data here because we have deleted the information, but still let's go into the project folder and see if we got any file. Yeah, this is the file, student info table, but we can't see any data. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm just commenting this out and writing the data back into this. Just add headers, and let's feed some data here with insert. Okay, we should see 4 rows again. Okay, fine, perfect. Let's run and see. Now if you go over the project and check for this file, this is perfect. And if you see the data that is there in the studio is Monica, but here we can see the data is being changed and reflected because we have an update query in the process which got executed. And also if you just refresh this, or just execute this, we can see the the updated values getting reflected over here. Okay, so this is it. We have seen we have seen what is execute query, execute non-query, how we can update, delete, insert, and also we can select. Okay, so these are the different activities that we can perform. But if you see whatever the data that we are using, the whole data is static. Okay, so this video is only concentrating on the static data, but going forward in the next video I'm going to talk about the parameters. So if you just observe, we have used only the static data here, right? All the data is static. And going forward in the further videos, I will explain you what are the parameters, how you can pass the data as a parameter, and also how you can use bulk uploading into the database by using the, because we are creating only a single entity. When I run the workflow, only a single row line item is created, right? But if my requirement is to create a 100 rows at a time or 1,000 rows at a time, then also it is possible. So I will show you all of them in going further videos. So this is about basics. I feel we have spent enough time on understanding the basics very clearly. So now if you're good with this without any questions, then you can be a pro going forward in the next sessions. Okay, so to not miss any of the videos, do subscribe to my channel, and do let me know if you're facing any questions in the comments. I'll try to answer them. And also do like the video. Thank you so much for watching.